Hello, me again. Navia, oh Navia, a character misunderstood by half the community and undervalued by the rest. And I am here to do her justice with this guide on how to build and play Navia. Navia is a Geo DPS who mainly focuses on using her normal attacks and bursts to charge up her elemental skill, which she uses to do nuclear damage. Navia's normal attacks are nothing special, just a 4-hit combo of physical damage, with the regular spin charge attack. There really isn't anything special going on here, except for, the best normal attack animations in the game, of course. Now, Navia's skill is going to take a while, so bear with me. Whenever you pick up a crystallized shard, Navia will gain crystal shrapnel. This will stack up to 6 times, which will all be used up when you use your skill. The first 3 stacks will work to increase the skill multiplier itself, which is the percentage you see when you level up your talents. Think of Nuvolet's first Ascension passive. This stacks up to double damage. Then you may ask, what are the last 3 stacks for? Simple. 15% damage bonus each, up to 45%. This means that to do full damage, you need 6 stacks. This skill also has 2 charges, and so to utilize Navia's full potential, you're gonna need a lot of crystallized shards. Thankfully, the rest of her kit helps with this, so let's get into that. Her burst will fire an artillery of cannons to fire upon the ground. Its targeting working the same way as Ayato and Ganyu, where the cannon fire will always target a random enemy. The damage of the burst isn't what matters. What matters is that every 2.5 seconds, you'll gain a crystal shrapnel stack. The burst is essential if you want to throw down your powered up skill every single time, and thank God it's only on a 6e cost. Her Ascension 1 passive will also be working towards supplying Navia with crystal shrapnel, by giving her 4 seconds of Geo Infusion. This infusion also comes with a 30% normal and charge attack bonus. This infusion exists to give you consistent Geo application outside of just having your burst to create more crystal shrapnel. It also allows her to be used as an on-fielder, which is always great because that means I get an excuse to look at her more. Her Ascension 4 also leans into the multi-element playstyle. It rewards Navia with 20% attack for every party member in the team that can be crystallized with. This stacks to up to 40% attack. So, to create crystallize, you do need these elements, so this passive just gives you more of an incentive to do so. Her talent priority is pretty simple, due to her kit's laser focus on her skill, so you're going to want to level that first. After your skill, you're going to level up your normal attacks, and after that your burst. There are teams in which you play Navia off-field, in which her burst becomes better than her normals, but I think Navia as an on-field DPS is better. Because of how much damage Navia is going to do, you're going to need to give her the right weapon to do that damage. First off, we have her signature, Verdict, which has a high base attack and increases her crit rate, attack percent, and elemental skill damage. Obviously, because it was made for her, it is her best in slot, but what may surprise you is how close other weapons are to it. Since Navia's attack scaling, she's going to use Bennett, which lowers the value of this weapon's high base attack, leading to other weapons getting a lot closer. They will still never match its drip though. Serpent Spine at R5 is less than 1% worse than Verdict, at a slightly more crit rate, with lower base attack, but a universal 50% damage bonus. A very strong option. You do however have to use Zhongli, as crystallized shields are too frail to keep your stacks up. You also have to wait at the beginning of the chamber for 20 damn seconds. Next up is Beacon and Redhorn. Beacon is just a strong attack stick with crit rate, and Redhorn is actually interesting because its normal attack damage applies to all 3 hits of her third normal attack. This makes it especially useful on her compared to other non-def scaling units. Then next up is R1 Serpent Spine, which I've already explained at R5, and Blackcliff. Blackcliff is a good but unreliable option. It has a decent passive, but needing to kill an enemy for its passive makes it unreliable in boss scenarios, which is actually where Navia is going to shine. After that we have Unforged and Wolf's Gravestone. These two are, again, just attack sticks, but due to how much attack Navia already has in her kit and using Bennett, most of it just gets you over the diminishing returns by far. After that we get to the true poverty weapons, with Blackcliff Slasher at R1, Talking Stick, Tidal Shadow, and Prototype Archaic. All of these work, but are overall just the budget options while you work towards one of the other weapons. Here's going to be a sheet for ranking all of Navia's best weapons. Hey, you there! We're like halfway through the video, so you might as well just subscribe and comment. Hell, you may as well like the video. On to the next section. Navia's artifacts options are quite varied, but there are two clear winners in the competition. Nighttime Whispers in the Echoing Woods, or Nighttime as I'll call it from now on, is Navia's best general set. It's only slightly behind Marechaussee Hunter, even if Furina is in the team, and when Furina isn't there, well, it beats every option by nearly 10%. That's comparable to the jump from 2-piece 2-piece to 4-piece Golden Troop on Fischl, providing up to 50% geo damage bonus and 18% attack, so this is sure as hell going to be one of the best sets to farm for Navia. Marechaussee Hunter, as previously mentioned, is Navia's technical best in slot when Furina is in the team, who you're going to see is one of her best supports. It's a very strong option that's very resin efficient to farm. Other potential options are 4-piece Vermilion and 4-piece Golden Troop. Golden Troop does assume that you swap out and back in to refresh the all-field buff, but this will extend your rotations. And Vermilion is, again, with Furina only. Do not farm these sets, especially for your Navia, but if you already have them, amazing. And then, you can go for any combination of 2-piece attack, geo damage, and skill damage. As for which main stats to use, it's incredibly simple. Just go for an attack Sans, geo damage Goblet, and a crit Circlet. Navia's stat breakpoints are really straightforward, since she only really wants crit and attack as well as a smidge of VR. You can just try and get a 1-to-2 ratio on your crit, with about 2100 attack. Her energy recharge requirements are very low, but I recommend 120% to 130% just to be on the safe side. Here's a sheet ranking all of her artifact options. Navia, being a carry, is going to be at the center of all your team building. With her mechanics focusing around picking up Crystallize shards to increase her skill's damage, the main thing you'll be looking for is a way to trigger Crystallize. Of course, you also need teammates to boost Navia's damage output as well. This means you need sub DPSs and damage buffers, and then obviously a healer or a shielder. So, I will go by these roles one by one and state good options for these roles, as Navia is a very flexible unit. For the role of sub DPS, you want to go for one of the elements that can crystallize. This means Electro, Cryo, Hydro, or Pyro. First, let's start with Furina, a strong sub DPS character who can do a lot of damage herself. She does come with the caveat of being forced to use a healer and not a shielder, but when you get to the damage buffing section, you'll realize that that's not a big issue. Albedo is also a strong sub DPS and is also the Geo element, which gives you Geo Resonance, the best resonance in the game for Geo characters. His own damage isn't anything to write home about, but his high geoparticle generation and giving Geo Resonance make him an incredible option. Next up, there's Yelan and Xingqiu. They both essentially do the same thing, but Yelan is better due to higher damage output, and also being able to boost Navia's damage. Xingqiu's higher application has no effect here. Fischl is also another sub DPS you can play, who is also able to run elegy for the end, and her high particle generation leads to lower energy recharge requirements on the rest of the team. Xiangling is an option for AoE scenarios, but her energy hunger leads to it being extremely uncomfortable. Now for damage buffers, let's start with a classic, Bennett. Damage buffer and healer extraordinaire. Bro's been running the damage buffing business for years, and despite his relevance being lowered, he'll always be the king of attack boosting. He also covers as a sustain unit, with his ridiculous healing, so he'll basically always be there. Zhongli is there, I guess. He only really counts here as a damage buffer because of his ability to run tenacity, and his shield lowering enemy geo resistance. This leads to him being a very good slot in our teams, even if his help with Crystallize is unreliable. C6 Goro is another option with Elegy for the end, but to use his full potential you gotta run 3 Geo, so you'd end up with something like Navia, Yelan, Goro, and Zhongli. There's also Ningguang who can run Flame Tails of Dragon Slayers, as well as boosting Navia's Geo damage bonus with her Ascension 4. Furina and Yelan also count in this category. And then finally we get to the sustain units. There's not much to say here, as Navia can work with any of them. But obviously she prefers the options that can help her in another way as well. Charlotte is someone who can heal the entire team for the sake of Furina's buff. If you manage to get enough energy recharge on her, she can also run Flame Tails of Dragon Slayers. This means she can now also buff Navia's damage herself. She's also capable of running Tenacity of the Millilith. The main issue here is that Navia will be able to make Shatter rather than Crystallize. Zhongli and Bennett also fill into this role. Navia has quite an interesting set of constellations. Her early constellations are disappointing, but it's worth it. Come on, look at her! Navia C1 will restore up to 9 energy and decrease her ult cooldown by up to 3 seconds every time you use her E. If you decide you do want to use your E 3 times, you can actually restore enough energy to use your ultimate twice. Dear God, a character that can actually burst twice per rotation. The last time we got this was... I don't even know, actually. Anyway, your energy recharge needs do increase by a solid amount to the point where it's impractical unless you have Albedo or multiple Favonius weapons. The C2 is very disappointing because it's boring. 36% crit rate on her E, and whenever you hit it, it doesn't take off burst damage. Yeah, not that great. C4 is 20% Geo Res Shred when an enemy is hit by her E. Literally a worse G in C4. Somehow. C6 is where something gets interesting. She gets up to 135% crit damage on her E. What? It also refunds you the stacks that you use based on how many you had upon use. You basically get the amount of stacks you consumed, minus 3. This Constellation makes a third E while retaining max stacks for every E possible. And just because of that third E, it makes her C6 her best Constellation. Considering you made it this far into the video, I bet you like my content. And since you like it so much, why don't you drop a subscription? Maybe even like the video. Ah, and don't forget to comment about how excited you are for Navia. Engaging with my videos boosts me further into the algorithm, which means more people will see my stuff. Navia is, like I said, very underrated by almost everyone I talk to. I think she's a strong unit, even if she isn't the best one out there. I am beyond satisfied with how Hoyo handled Navia's kit, as she is my favorite character. When I found out she was going to be Geo Claymore, I was really scared. I prayed that she would be fun, and I'm glad to say that they did her justice. This is a unit I can see myself playing until the game dies, and so it's only appropriate that she'll be my first C6 5-star character. I hope you will enjoy your Navia if you intend to pull for her, and if you don't, why'd you click on the video? That's going to be all from me. Peace.